A relationship with the right referral partner could be a game changer for any B2B company. So what if you could reverse engineer these relationships at a moment's notice? Start a podcast, invite potential referral partners to be guests on your show, and grow your referral network faster than ever. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Hey, thanks for checking out this episode of the B2B Growth Show. My name is Ethan Beute. I host the CX series here on the podcast. Of course, it's all about customer experience, the single most important thing that we create and deliver every single day as individuals, teams, and organizations. And you're about to hear from a gentleman who scaled a customer success organization from one person, himself, to dozens. Some of the lessons he learned along the way. The relationship between customer success and customer experience. The relationship between employee experience and customer experience, and how appropriate experience is the best experience of all. Enjoy this conversation with Jonathan Bolton. Hey, thanks so much for checking out this episode of the Customer Experience Podcast. If you have not yet already, you should subscribe. That way you will not miss an episode. I'm really excited for today's guest. He is a 7-year BombBomb team member, one of our earliest customer support people who spent about 5 years scaling the customer success organization inside our company from one person to about 30. He is currently our Senior Vice President of Operations. Jonathan Bolton, welcome to the Customer Experience Podcast.
Thanks so much, Ethan. It's an honor to be here with you.
I'm really excited to get into it because, as I just said, you scaled that organization from it was you,
yeah,
to a whole team of people, and then kind of handed it off and now are helping shepherd that. But, there are other people running that now and you have other challenges. And so we're going to get into what you've learned throughout that whole process. But I want to start where we always start, which is your thoughts or your definition or your characteristics of customer experience.
That's a great question. When I think about customer experience, there are a bunch of words that I think people use very lazily, like interchangeably, when they talk about product. I believe that many times what they actually mean is customer experience. Mm-hmm. I think when they talk about customer success, many times what they're talking about is customer experience. It is the whole of what it is like to engage in a relationship with this product, the people behind the product, the communication behind the product. Everything about that is, in my opinion, part of that customer experience. So liken it to a relationship. Right? As you meet somebody for the very first time, what is the experience of that relationship? Everything that you recount, what do they look like? In what setting do you meet them? What is intriguing or not about them? What is attractive or off-putting? How do they speak? What do you learn about that? And do you plan on engaging with them again? Right? I mean, that's kind of how I think about customer experience.
I love it because you've added another layer to the conversation around customer experience in that you kind of personified it there as a person. I think about it, it's like your first impression may be good or bad, but you're going to proceed anyway for whatever reason, and it might change a little bit. It might get more nuanced. You start to come to know each other in terms of, not that relationships are purely transactional, but what do I need to sustain this relationship and what does it offer me in return?
Sure.
All these things. So I love that analogy.
Yeah, I mean, tell me you don't have relationships that are transactional. You certainly have people that you are hoping in this engagement here, as I am going through the the airport security check line, that we are transactional and that is fine and fully acceptable and what I expect from a customer experience standpoint, right? Not really interested in going deep with you right now on how things are going at home. So I think,
Totally.
I think with different relationships, just as we have different relationships with products and companies, our expectations change.
Yeah.
What is the appropriate experience in that setting?
Yeah, that your TSA scenario there reminded me of all those LinkedIn connections where you like reluctantly accept them. And then boom, 2 seconds later, you have someone in your message box like, can I tell you about?
Ethan, I was really intrigued by your profile.
Right. Yeah. I also went to a school in the upper Midwest United States. We have so much in common. So let's go because I feel like your journey in building, thank you for everything you've done over the years in building our customer success organization.
Thanks for doing it with me.
Yeah.
And for the opportunity to do it.
Yeah. And like I granted it to you or something. The language around CS came up as you were coming up in that organization and building it out. Talk a little bit about the relationship between customer success and customer experience. In your definition, you offered that they're often used synonymously. And of course, they are not synonyms. Where are they similar? Where are they different? What's the relationship between CS and CX?
Gosh, that's a great question. So you're right. Initially, when I started at BombBomb, I think my title was Client Services, right? VP of Client Services. And I remember at one point getting an email invite from a gentleman by the name of Ed Powers, up in Denver.
First guest on the show, by the way.
Right. Inviting me to the customer success meetup, for Colorado. We have a great startup and tech scene in Colorado. And I remember thinking, what on earth is this? Like, it just felt like a term that was loosely being thrown around. Right. And so as I got more into it, I really came to realize customer success, not necessarily as a role, but as a philosophy. And so I think anytime you're talking about customer success, you have to determine, first of all, are we talking about a function or are we talking about a philosophy? Both are very important. And so that's kind of the first thing that I think needs to be uncovered. And when we talk about the role and even the philosophy to some extent, we talk about being a little bit more proactive than the reactive customer support or customer service, right? Or client services methodologies of old for obvious reasons. We're building relationships with our customers. We hope to renew the opportunity to continue to do business together. I believe this is true regardless of whether or not you're in a SaaS company or if you are a realtor. We hope we have the opportunity to renew or do business together again, right? And so our ability to understand what success looks like for you, how you define that success. Think about this even I'm jumping around here a little bit, but think about this even in the sales process, right? I need to do a good job of understanding what problem am I solving for you? What is it that you're looking to accomplish? How do you know if you're accomplishing it? And then do I have something that fits the bill? Can I help you kind of meet that need? And then if I do, great, I'm going to sell you. Then I'm going to show you how to do it to fit the bill. I better, right? Then I better hold you accountable or at least hold myself accountable to meeting that outcome. Because if I do, there's a high likelihood, as long as we agree on our terms and we're comfortable with our terms of doing business together, that I'm going to retain your business. I'm going to have the opportunity to do that again and again, right? So we talk a lot about desired outcomes. There's a discipline to asking the right questions, to knowing, to uncover and understand what success means for you. There's a discipline to how is that measured and implemented. There's a discipline to checking back in and making sure that's happening again, iterating on that. Have your needs changed? Have your expectations changed? The way you define success, has that changed? We need to understand that and measure it, to help you achieve your desired outcome. If we do, I win. We get to do this again, right? What is interesting, to take a step back is that methodology, sure, there's a role of a customer success manager, or, you and I were talking the other day about really that's like an account manager. This is not, it's some of the language is new, but these are, or a relationship manager, you might call it.
From a functional standpoint, this has been done before.
Exactly. So
the philosophy has new language and spirit.
Yeah. So there are these roles, but when you think about ultimately what customer success means, I've already talked about just how it impacts sales. Really, the philosophy is one that needs to be applied to the whole company. Customer success should, if you have the right outcomes, if you have your customers' success in mind as the measurable outcome, it should influence the way that you're building a product, shouldn't it? Mm-hmm. It should influence the way that, engineering is working with product. It should influence how you measure its efficacy and how you iterate on it. So it should be part of the sales process. It should be part of the marketing process. It should be part of your business. Customer success is not a new concept. We're just changing the language. We're breaking pieces out so that we can think strategically about them. But really, it's about business. Like, what business person doesn't get into business with the desire to solve a problem for you? And we're engaging in a business interaction to determine, hey, I have an apple. Would you like one?
Right.
Right. Now, how does this relate to customer experience? Well, in many ways, the work that you do from a customer success standpoint will influence or should be part of the customer experience. And the work that you do from a customer success standpoint should inform the customer experience. I think about our voice of customer initiatives that we have here at BombBomb. How are we listening well? Are we asking the right questions? And then are we feeding that information into the CX? Does it change the way that you send a newsletter out? Does it change the way that you build an onboarding campaign? Does it change the tone of the phone calls that your representatives on behalf of your company are making, or the stuff they're posting on social media? So they're very, very closely related. And in fact, I believe that some people use the terms kind of interchangeably. You need both.
Yeah, that was great, by the way. I know when I listen to this back, I'm going to probably bounce it back with that 30-second skip thing and listen to parts of that again. I think I would say that they could potentially be more synonymous if customer success is adopted and practiced the way you've described it. I think that a natural outcome of that would be a much, much better customer experience, in that it's desired result oriented. It's got some holism because the whole team has adopted it or is thinking about it in that way. It has a customer empathy to it, or it's kind of customer first-ish. I think the natural consequence of a team of competent, relatively warm, excited, energetic people doing that, the natural outcome would be just a great experience. You and I have not talked about this specifically. I'm just curious about it. It's kind of like a common talking point, I think, in this zone. Talk about the relationship between desired outcome and surprise and delight, or wow moments, or whatever. Talk about the balance there.
Yeah.
Or the appropriate relationship. I mean, obviously in the best case scenario, you're doing it all, but how do you think about those things?
One of the concepts that I really like, and I'm trying to remember who to, give this credit to. It might've been Lincoln Murphy, was talking, if you haven't heard this term before, it's appropriate experience. And we touched on it a little bit when we were talking about TSA, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, what do I need to achieve, right? What ultimately is the thing that I'm driving toward? And then what is my preferred experience to get there? Mm-hmm. And when you combine those two things, the need of what I need to accomplish and how I would like to experience that, you get appropriate experience. And so when I think about desired outcomes, what I'm really talking about is what number do I need to hit? What do I need to accomplish, right? And then how do I want to accomplish that? You put those things together, and now you get this kind of beautiful marriage of customer success as defined by a metric, customer experience in terms of how I want to arrive there. And that is where you create some really powerful experiences, I believe, for your customer. And so you might tuck elements of surprise and delight into that if it is the appropriate experience, if it's the kind of experience that makes sense. Do you want to Can you imagine some scenarios, Ethan, where you would not like to be surprised and delighted?
Yes.
I can. They tend to be very transactional.
Hey, we put 10 extra toppings on your pizza. What do you mean you don't want asparagus and kiwi?
Yeah, exactly. Or sometimes I'm trying to get something done. I'm not really interested in the niceties, right? Imagine walking into a store because you know exactly what you want to buy and you have 15 minutes to get it. Hey, welcome to my store. Has anyone told you about the 50% off sale we have on everything that's red? And also, did you know that no.
Yeah.
That's not a surprise or delight. That's not the appropriate experience for me. I'm very transactional in this mindset, right? I need this item. Great. Aisle 45, bin 20. Nailed it. Right. Oh, I'm happy. I'm delighted. Because it is the appropriate experience for me based on, on what I'm looking for.
So good. Just to hit that TSA example, like the desired outcome is I need to get through here in a timely manner to get to my airport gate. Yeah. And an appropriate thing is, we don't make too much eye contact. We don't have too much language. It doesn't take very long. It's not particularly invasive. We're probably not going to smile at each other. We're certainly not going to handshake or fist bump or anything. But it might be a little bit delightful if you smile and have some kind of a brief pleasantry. It would be an exception beyond the normal transaction.
Yeah.
But the desired outcome could be achieved, but it could be achieved terribly.
Yeah. Absolutely. Boy, I'd love to make it through that process without being yelled in my ear multiple times.
Or have to unpack stuff out of my bag or anything. That's why you get pre-check, by the way, which is not very exclusive anymore. It's just, there's a price to your dignity, such as keeping your shoes and belt on. This is a topic I know you're passionate about, and it's one that we're going to be exploring even more on this show because we've kind of skirted by it a little bit, but I think you're in a unique position to speak to it well and really start opening this up as a proper theme throughout the episodes. And it's the relationship between employee experience and customer experience. In your mind and in your experience, how are those two related? And what are some things that you've seen or even done or had other people do to make them work really well together?
Yeah. It's a great question. It's one that I am really beginning to unpack. I've always been involved in the culture. We talk about our culture and our core values and how do you scale that as the business grows, right? And I care very much about it. And meanwhile, I'm working on all this customer success and I'm hearing customer success leaders speak. And sometimes they get into, more of a product side of things or more of a customer experience side of things. All of the takeaways I think are really valuable. But what's fascinating is, in the same way that we think about products today, I would argue there's never been a better time to be a consumer, right? And the reason is because we have so many options available to us, more than in the history of mankind. They're readily accessible to us. And we don't have to commit. We can really figure out what works for me. And I can go, if I don't want to pay for cable, I can go to Hulu. And if I don't want Hulu, I can go to Netflix, or I can do both. Or maybe I'll try YouTube TV or whatever, right? And I can move. There's not a lot of loyalty. It's a great market for consumers. Drives competitive, the competitive advantage or the competition up and lowers my cost. I get a better product. You don't have to put all that in the podcast. That was really long. You get it. You get the sense of it's never been a better time to be a consumer. So here's this interesting revelation to me as I'm sitting down and I am, providing professional development feedback. We're talking about career tracking with some of our employees here. And their language starts to sound a little funny to me. And I'm like, man, what is it? I can't quite put my finger on it. And I kind of came to this epiphany that I believe, I know this sounds a little bit crazy, but I believe that employees today, more than ever before, have almost become consumers of the jobs that we're providing for them. What do I mean? Hey, the economy right now is really pretty healthy. There are a lot of varying job opportunities out there. And when you look on these LinkedIn profiles that we were alluding to before, how many times do you see people skip around, especially if you're in that technology space? Boy, you see a bunch of people moving around, right? And so then it starts to make you think about, if your employee is a consumer of the job that you're providing, and I have something, that I want to achieve. I want to achieve retention. I want to achieve highly motivated employees. I want to achieve attracting the best talent to my company that is a core value fit that's going to help us, rehumanize the planet. That's a really lofty goal. So I have to start thinking about what is the appropriate experience right? What is specifically does that employee need to achieve? How much money do they need to make? That sort of thing. How do they want to get there? They want a supportive environment with, people that share the same core values, that is, driven towards something that they believe in. They want to know that they're achieving something and that they're achieving something that matters. So I better get pretty good at defining what now employee success looks like. What is employee experience? If you're going to scale your business to achieve these wildly outrageous goals that you have set for yourself or that your board has set for you, do you think it's going to require an incredible team to get there? You already know the answer. There's no question on it. So why would you not take the same methodology that you're working to develop from a customer success or a customer experience standpoint and apply it to employee success and employee experience? If you can do that well, do you think that it might help you carry these missions of customer success and customer experience further? I would argue that it would, because you have something specific to talk about. Ethan, what did you think about the way that we onboarded you? What's your feedback on that? What did it feel like? Oh gosh, it was great. Well, listen, I'm so glad you're sitting on the product team, because that same experience that we work to create for you as an employee, we believe it's even more so important to create for our customers. What do you think about that, right? It just makes sense. And it's critical, I would argue, it's critical to success. In fact, I would argue it is the most critical thing to your success. You definitely hear, even from some of the people that motivate and inspire us, you hear stories about uprisings within the employee ranks, maybe because some of this appropriate experience, this employee experience and employee success maybe wasn't correctly addressed on when they had the better scale to do so. So do it while you're young.
Yeah, it's funny. I think a lot of that bleeds through. I mean, when you're defining customer success off the top there was an element of, what it feels like when you engage with your brand or your company's people. Mm-hmm. And so I think that really comes through a lot. If you have people who are good, who are selected well, onboarded well, who are engaged in the work that they're doing, that sincerely feel like the work actually matters, I think that's going to bleed through and we've experienced that ourselves. Like when we go to conferences or trade shows, or we get to meet groups of people in person, I think the feedback that we get on, for example, the customer care associate who's on the phone or in email inboxes and send a lot of video emails to customers. We just get great feedback about how arguably one of the most thankless jobs. I mean, it's a tough job. You're exclusively dealing with people when they're confused or frustrated at best and angry at worst. And that you can turn that around and have people ask. I've had that happen to me out. I don't know if it's happened to you before. Ask about customer care associates by name. Hey, is Angie here?
Yeah.
No, she's not. She's back in the Colorado Springs house. Oh man, she's the best. And they have these stories and it's so good. So I think they're intimately related. And I loved your passage there and your offering on that. Yeah.
I think you mentioned also like, how do you measure that? And I would just argue that, the very same things that you're doing to measure customer experience or customer success, you could pretty easily apply to employee experience and employee success, right? So look at things like employee NPS is a really easy one. We measure that one here. Employee satisfaction, right? Give them a survey. How was that onboarding experience for them, right? We do a culture survey here that measures kind of multiple facets of that. Churn, right? Or retention. That's obviously a very expensive problem that our companies are facing, both on the customer side and the employee side as well. So these are metrics, these are measures that you're familiar with. And what does that journey look like? What does the customer experience journey look like for your employees? Just switching that little frame of reference, think about your employees as customers. And if you suddenly change that mindset, does it open your eyes to new possibilities about how to build an amazing company? I would argue that it does.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I watched a presentation you gave a few years back. And one of your lines was that we're sitting on our next expansion opportunity. And so I just want to have you just offer up a few ideas around the tension between efforts toward acquisition versus efforts toward retention. There's a constant challenge there. I think in our DNA, we're a sales and marketing organization. I think if you look at the way we were founded and some of the early folks, even, our chief technology officer, I feel like was very kind of sales and marketing oriented and was happy to have those conversations and stuff. It's like, it's in our DNA. And so like at times, we have this tension between acquisition and retention. I know we are not unique in it. And in a presentation you gave, you spoke at length about, your next customer is already in your database or your customer base. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I have kind of multiple thoughts on that. The first thing is there's this interesting phenomenon that happens in a SaaS company where all the excitement is in growth, right? And then as you're successful there, of course, and then successful at retaining, all of a sudden, right, we have this KPI board up that shows new money coming in, and then it shows recurring money, right? And for the longest time, as you're growing in the initial stages, well, sometimes it's very, very quick, but it feels long for those that are actually working to drive all that new revenue into the business. You got a really big number on the acquisition side of the house, and you're just, you're looking, just kind of keeping an eye on the retention. And then all of a sudden it meets and you have $1 million coming in on both sides that month. And then what happens is exponentially your recurring revenue grows much, much bigger than your acquisition revenue. And that is appropriate. That's how a company grows. And so the question you need to ask yourself is, are the resources, is the effort, is the focus commensurate to that where that revenue is coming from? And if you're mismatched, and if you're growing quickly, you can get mismatched quickly. You just need to make sure that you are watching that carefully. So for customer success leaders out there, your job is to watch that, change, and then make sure that you are advocating for the resources that you need as the business grows there. So speaking more specifically to your question, as your business grows, one of the things that can be very challenging is, I should ask, do you want to talk about data here?
Sure.
The first place that my head goes when we talk about knowing that customer is data, right? So the first thing that really pops into my mind specifically on that question about your next great customer being in your database. So at BombBomb, last I heard, nearly 60%. This was at a time where we were getting self-identified. How did you hear about BombBomb? Kind of feedback results. And I want to say, and Ethan, you probably know better than I do, 60% of people coming in said they were referred from somebody.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. And I forget the buckets, but it was like coach or consultant or family member, friend, coworker scenario. Yeah. It was dominantly, it might have even been higher than 60.
Yeah. It's really interesting how trust right now in this market where you're overwhelmed with options, who and just knowing somebody that has an opinion on that is worth so much, because
it's a shortcut. I don't have time to sort it all out. You've already done it.
Exactly.
Help me out, man.
You used to be able to Google and get the option or two that were available to you. Now you Google and get the 24 options that are available to you. And so that's the first part about kind of your next great customer coming from this, customer base that you already have. I think the other thing that's relevant there is, what do we know about our customers? Are we asking? Are we documenting that? And are we organizing it in a way that, the endpoints are accessible? So we're talking a lot about data strategy, because if I did a good job of asking you what success looks like, and I documented that somewhere, then if you called back in 3 months later and I had that information readily accessible and said, Ethan, I know you're trying to bump your conversion rate by 2 percentage points. I just wanted to check in. How is that going? Oh my gosh, would that be an amazing customer experience? Would that be head and shoulders above the experiences that you and I have had with some of the tools of the vendors and the products that we work with? I think it would be. And then what if you could break out cohorts? What if you knew that certain customers were, interested in one product over another, or use a specific element of your product? Can you add value there? Right now, it's fascinating to look at the types of customers that BombBomb has, because you'll look through, thousands and thousands, and then all of a sudden you'll see some domains that you recognize. And you'll think, oh my gosh, we have people from that company, that snuck in, set it up. They're starting to use it successfully. Is there a way that I could connect and help bring greater value to that organization? If they're experiencing success there, which is my first problem to solve, then have I earned the right then to offer them the opportunity to bring even greater success to the rest of their business, right?
Yeah, it's good. So Before we go to where I always like to end here, again, one of the reasons I was so excited to have a conversation with you, to be able to share with listeners, is just what you've seen. And when you started, we maybe had 500 customers, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have over 45,000. And so dramatic period, you built an organization there. Now you have purview as SVP of operations over the connections between some of these organizations, or silos in the case that we're behaving not properly.
Mm-hmm.
If someone listening to the show says, I want to give my customers, no matter what business I'm in, an experience that they want to go tell a friend about, or if the conversation comes up, do you know anyone that solves X problem, that boom, I got someone, it's these people. What are one or two things or three things that you've picked up in this journey over the last 7 years that are relevant at a high level to giving someone an experience with a product or service or company or team that is worth talking about?
Oh, that's so great. I'm going to go back to the appropriate experience topic that we've talked about. It is to really know in explicit terms, right, what success looks like for that individual. Is it that they want to easily get to a movie quickly? Is it that they want to not have to interact with a person? Is it that they do want to have to interact with a person? Like, what is the outcome that they're after? And then what is the preferred experience to achieve that outcome? If you do that really, really well, then you are going to have customers that are delighted with their customer experience. So I think there's some danger, by the way, when we talk about desired outcomes, in sometimes pressing our outcomes, or maybe an outcome that's easy for us to measure, onto the customer as their own. And if you're really good at sales, if you're very persuasive, you can very easily, I can very easily convince somebody. There's no malintent in this, by the way. I can very easily convince somebody that this is their desired outcome, right? Imagine for a moment that you have a customer that says, our organization has an initiative to create wow moments for our customers. Oh, okay, great. Wow moments. Yeah. How do you want to measure that? Oh, probably just people that comment on how remarkable it is. Great. Okay. If you take that at face value, you run the risk of not completely aligning what you're offering to your customer with what ultimately they're trying to achieve. So ask why a couple more times. What do you mean by wow moments? Why? How are you measuring those? Well, Ethan, what I really need to do is get my NPS score up. The board is very interested in seeing an NPS score at 67. Right now we're at 53. Aha. Now I have something that you're deeply committed to. And if I can align supporting you in that effort and ask you how it's going and provide you what I can on a proactive side about the types of behaviors that might yield that better result, now I'm more closely aligned with your success. If I can do it in a way that also matches your preferred experience to that, I'm going to knock it out of the park, because when you go to the board, you're going to be able to say, hey, this is where we're at, right? Mm-hmm. And now that's, when you talk about having a champion in the business, it's great to have a great relationship with somebody. It's even better to have a great relationship with somebody and be closely aligned with what success looks like for them, not what success looks like for you.
Perfect. Two main ideas there I just want to hit on. One is this idea of being very explicit and very clear that we are exactly on the same page with what that success means. And then I'm going to tie two ideas together here. One is this idea of appropriate experience. Am I in a hurry or not? For example, as a consumer that walks into your, say, retail establishment, if you hire people well and you train them well and you have these types of conversations and you really are customer oriented, I think what's required here, and even in your sales example of kind of like hard walking someone straight into what I think is everyone's desired outcome, because I'm not interested in the nuance of everybody. I'm interested in closing the sale and sharing my vision with you and getting you onto my vision. This ability to read people and empathize with people and understand people and ask a couple questions to truly understand, that requires a good person, an engaged person, a thoughtful person, frankly, a more holy developed and healthy, psychologically healthy person to be able to connect and empathize in that way, to assess, sometimes even without words, what is appropriate for this person? What is the appropriate experience for this person? Because to your point, I may want to come in and browse and I need 5 minutes of consultation, or I know exactly what I'm looking for. Just simple reading body language. Most of us would be able to do that, but I think hiring that and coaching to that and doing developmental training on it is really helpful. This has been super fun. I love it. I know people are going to enjoy it. If you are listening to this podcast and you enjoy the types of things that you're learning, send me an email, Ethan, ETHAN @BombBomb.com. I welcome any thoughts and feedback, and I promise I'll send you a video back. As you know, as well as anyone, JB, Jonathan.
You can call me JB.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate that. So glad I've earned that. As well as anyone, that relationships are our number one core value. You model it very well and you celebrate it well. So in that spirit, I always like to close these conversations with the opportunity for you to thank or mention someone who's had a positive impact on your life or career, and to give a mention to a company or two that have delivered for you a really great experience that you find remarkable.
Yeah, so obviously the first people that come to mind are our co-founders here at BombBomb, Darren and Connor, who took a risk on me to hire me as their, out of the financial world where I was before and into a role of answering the support phone. And I remember literally, I knew that I had the ability to get the job, and I remember literally fretting over, oh my gosh, they're not going to, they may not hire me for this. So I think, the fact that they took that chance on me is one that I'm really appreciative of. I'm appreciative of you. Wouldn't it be amazing if every company had the privilege of having the person that writes their newsletters and begins laying the foundation of their marketing department also be the same person that's talking about customer experience? I've never felt alone in the customer success journey. I've never had to do work to get marketing on board with customer experience or customer success, because it is baked into your DNA. So I love that you're hosting this, bringing the community together to have conversations like this, because you're such an advocate for that. And so thank you for doing that for us.
That's really kind. I live that tension of acquisition and retention. We all know what the right thing is. It's just hard to get it done day in and day out. Anyway, that's very kind. I appreciate that. Any companies that come to mind when you think about, man, that was just they couldn't have done that better?
Yeah. So I have a fun one for you.
Good.
Porsche.
All right.
So I drive a Porsche, a used one.
Okay.
A used one. And I love my experience with this company. So Porsche doesn't sell, they describe their entry level vehicles as being a used Porsche. So here I am, an entry level, I'm buying at the very bottom, of the rung. I never feel that way. I feel like I bought a $250,000 car. I roll in, everything's on time. The experience that I want to have, that I imagine, ooh, yeah, I got this car. I love driving, and I am treated with an experience that is definitely my preferred experience to get there, but it's also well organized. The communication is great. Porsche of Colorado Springs here is one of the top, I think, 5 dealers in the nation, and they just
in terms of customer feedback.
Yeah, and they just do in volume. They've got this classic restoration. It's a really fun. If you're a car person, it's a fun place to visit because you can nerd out. It's beautiful, but I remember getting my used kind of bottom, car there I got it detailed, and it needed to be cleaned or some. No, you know what? I had this super expensive repair bill, and I think they offered to detail it for me. And I'm like, oh, that'd be great. Yeah. Thank you for the offer. And so I go to pick up my car, and I'm waiting, and they're like, well, are you ready to see it? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Here it is in the showroom, blanketed under spotlights.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't even know it was my car that was sitting. It was over my shoulder the whole time. I figured there was somebody much more important than me getting ready to pick up their brand new something or another. Nope. The staff walks out. They grab the corners. They unveil, the car for me. What a special experience it was. The customer experience there has been fantastic. So I wonder if that's a break from the types of experiences that other people are sharing.
It is a unique one. I mean, we get, and rightfully so, we get the Slacks and the Apples and the Southwests and the Four Seasons and stuff. I've not heard Porsche before.
There's a car one.
And there's a really good community around it too, which is a testament to what they do, at least locally and regionally here. I feel like there's a good community of drivers and advocates that advance the experience you have even further. This has been an absolute pleasure. If someone wants to connect with you or with BombBomb, what are a couple ways they might be able to do that?
Sure. You're welcome to email me, jb@bombbomb.com. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active. I'm terrible at Facebook and Instagram. That's like locked down, and I, probably only post once a quarter or so on there, but I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, or you can email me directly as well.
Hey, thank you again so much for your time, JB. And I know folks are going to find it valuable. If you do find this show valuable, please go ahead and subscribe to the Customer Experience Podcast in Apple Podcasts, iTunes, or wherever you listen to your favorite show. Such a great leader and manager and such a great person. I've so enjoyed working with Jonathan over the past several years. I hope you took some valuable takeaways out of that conversation. And I hope you visit bombbomb.com/podcast, where we post overviews and video clips from this conversation and all of the others that we have on the Customer Experience Podcast. You can find the Customer Experience Podcast anywhere that you prefer to check out your shows. Thanks so much for listening to the B2B Growth Show.
Hey guys, if you've been listening to B2B Growth for a while, you know we're good friends with Sangram over at Terminus. So we wanted to let you know something really cool he's up to lately. This week and this week only, Sangram's newest book, ABM is B2B, is available for just $1.99. That's right, $1.99, a steal from the regular $14.95 price. And here are a few reasons why you want to check out this book. One, you'll learn stories from 6 companies and the specific steps they took to take their ABM program from good to great. You'll also learn the team framework that Sangram talks about and is time-tested in over 100 companies. If that's not enough, they're giving away 100% of the profits and $10 per review of the book to the New Story charity. So check out the link in the show notes to take advantage of this screaming deal and get your copy of ABM is B2B by Sangram Vajre and Eric Spett on Amazon for just $1.99 this week.